kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes. Good morning, Toledo, and good afternoon, Columbus, and hello to those of you listening on the internet, wherever and whenever you are. My name is Joe DeMare, and I'm here in studio with my co-host,
Rebecca Wood.
Yes, and together we are about to bring you an amazing hour of ecological information called For a Green Future. For a Green Future is a show where we talk about all sorts of ecology and environmental issues. We talk about them in the ways that they affect you, your wealth, your health, your happiness. And this is a particularly happy day because this is, of course, the 4th of July, where we celebrate the United States of America. Of course, it was just the colonies back then breaking away from the autocratic rule of King George. And, a great moment in sort of human political history that is definitely worth celebrating. And we're going to be doing a special thing for it today. And I'm having a little contest here. And I'd like to ask someone with a good voice to call in to the station here at 877-909-1007. That's 877-909-1007. And sing the National Anthem for us. And, assuming you can sing it to Rebecca and my liking, assuming you can sing fairly well, we're going to give a gift of $20 to whoever calls in and sings the National Anthem for us. And just in celebration of the 4th of July. And I have to warn you, though, that if nobody calls in, and I need somebody to call in the next 10 minutes or so, if nobody calls in, I'm going to sing the National Anthem, which, yeah, I know. This is something to be avoided. So, I'd really appreciate it if somebody who has a good voice, or if you have a friend with a good voice, call them up right now. Tell them to call in. They can make $20 for singing just one quick verse. We just want the one verse because I guess some of the additional verses get a little controversial. So just the first verse of the National Anthem, we'd be happy to pay you $20 in celebration of the 4th of July, Independence Day. So before we get to that, though, I'm sure many of our regular listeners, the folks who were listening last week, would like an update on the baby raccoon situation in Rebecca's yard. So, Rebecca, could you tell us what's been going on over there?
Well, the trapping has been unsuccessful. Apparently because someone, either the babies or the mama, is digging under the cage to get the food.
I see. So you put out a live trap, and rather than walk into the trap, the raccoons are smart enough to dig under the trap and take the bait without setting off the trap.
Basically, so either the mama is still around or the babies might be smart enough to avoid the pit bulls. So I guess it's okay that we haven't trapped him yet.
Yeah. My guess is that it is, in fact, this is not something I'd be amazed if a baby raccoon came up with this on their own. I think the mama's around and teaching them the raccoon tricks needed to survive in the modern world here.
They seem kind of hapless to me. They let me get within like a foot of the babies. The one time.
Yeah, but they're not looking emaciated, though, right?
No, they look fluffy. Mostly fluff, but they're very active,
Okay, well then probably the mom's still around, and
fingers crossed.
You don't have to trap them, and yeah, but I thought that would be interesting. Let's see, we don't have anybody, no one's called in yet at 877-909-1007. The reason I wanted to talk about this is because this is my favorite quote of mine. And that is that wilderness is the infrastructure of freedom. That if you have a strong, healthy ecosystem all around you, whatever sort of biome you're in, you have more freedom because when you get to the point where your quote-unquote civilization has turned your area into a desert like civilization did to the Middle East, your possibilities are really limited. If you can't get any of your resources from the environment around you because that environment's been degraded, then you're kind of stuck. You're kind of stuck in whatever sort of geopolitical thing any sort of human society you're in, and it really limits your possibilities. And I think we're going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and sing the national anthem now. So, you might want to either turn your radio down or sing along yourself really loud to drown me out.
There we go.
That would probably be the better way to do it. So here we go. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? So, thank you very much.
I hummed along slightly.
I appreciate that, yeah. And, I hope you were all singing nice and loud so you actually couldn't hear me. But
I tried to hum the harmony part. It may not have worked.
No, I think it worked. Well,
Okay.
The problem was your harmony was better than my melody.
Yeah.
So it kind of, I don't know. But the reason I
Probably needs more rehearsal time, and we're not doing that.
no, we're not real big on rehearsal here. This is a live show.
Yes.
But the reason I really wanted to bring that up is those last couple lines. I always think this when I hear the national anthem, whether it's at a sports event or whenever I hear it, is this still the land of the free and the home of the brave? And to me, the people who are fighting to save the planet right now are kind of like the best demonstration of people that are free and brave. I mean, because they are doing things like literally putting their lives on the line to protect forest. They've given up. They've broken themselves out of their jobs and their home life to go off to sacrifice to try to protect these last wild spaces, like in Fairy Creek. And we have an update on Fairy Creek during our ecological news segment. And, to me, those are the truest Americans, because we get asked that question every time we hear the national anthem. Is this the home of the free and the brave? And, I kind of think that if you're truly patriotic, you've got to do things that are brave, and you have to use this freedom that's been given you and not just, float along and do, show up for work every day and just sit around doing nothing when everything that you are living on and everything that you do hold dear is right now literally physically being threatened by things like this climate change. And again, we have some more news about that later in the show. And so the whole show is our little intro section here. We're almost through this. And then we're going to hear an interview with a woman named Cathy Cowan-Becker, who's been a guest on the show before. And she's going to be talking about what's been some things that are happening that are challenging the move to have cities become 100% environmentally friendly or 100% clean energy. And what's been happening is sort of a conservative backlash against that movement. So that's an important bit of information. So we'll have an interview with her starting around 10:15. Then we'll hear from our wonderful, fantastic, beautiful advertisers and patrons. And then Rebecca's going to talk to us a little bit about bunnies.
I am.
Yes, and so that's something to look forward to. Then we'll hear some ecological news. And this show is, you're going to hear some incredibly dramatic ecological news. I mean, it's kind of flabbergasting. Is that a verb? If you're flabbergasted, you get that's
an adverb, I think.
Okay.
No, an adjective.
Okay, but it's a real thing. Okay.
I think it's you didn't just make it up, probably.
Okay, but so that's some incredibly dramatic ecological news this week. And again, as always, hopefully we hear from you at 877-909-1007. That's 877-909-1007. And anytime in the show, you can also text in at 419-973-5841. That's 419-973-5841. And I'm going to leave the offer open for the whole show, that if somebody wants to call in, if my version of the National Anthem
you can beat that,
kind of caused you pain, and you kind of want to fix that, if you're an actual singer, someone who can really sing, feel free, call on in and sing, and we'll still...
He wasn't purposely doing that to be disrespectful. It's his real voice.
I was doing the best I could, which...
I wasn't that bad, really.
Now you know what the best I can do is.
So maybe people will not start paying you to do the anthem at some baseball shows is all I'm saying now.
True. I have true amateur status there. Yeah. No one has ever paid me to sing anything. So, all right. Well, so I think it's already time to go over to Cathy Cowan-Becker's interview, and I just want to set this up a little bit. As I've said before, and as we've had her on the show before, there's a national movement for this. It's called Ready for 100, and it's getting municipalities to agree to switching their electricity supply over to 100% clean energy, and they define clean energy as wind and solar and hydro. So they leave out nukes and quote-unquote clean coal and quote-unquote clean natural gas, all this dirty stuff that some people are trying to redefine as clean. No, they're talking about really clean energy. And they've had remarkable success with some of the largest cities in the country. And, in fact, they had success with Columbus. Columbus has done this. But what's happening is that the conservative Republicans are fighting back, and she'll give you some more details here in our interview. So go ahead, Josh. Let's hear from Cathy Cowan-Becker. Okay, hello. Welcome to For a Green Future. If you could just tell us your name and your title.
Yes, my name is Cathy Cowan-Becker. I have a few different titles, but probably most relevant to this is chair of the Ready for 100 campaign in Ohio. I'm also the executive director of a Columbus sustainability nonprofit called Simply Living.
Simply Living. Okay, it sounds nice.
It is.
Okay. All right. Well, Cathy, I contacted you because I wanted to get your reaction to a trend I'm seeing, a legislative trend I'm starting to see around the country. And that is, well, first, a little bit of background. The last time we had you on was talking about Columbus's successful Ready for 100 campaign. And once again, congratulations on that. Could you just tell our listeners a little bit about what Columbus decided to do?
Yeah, so Columbus is, they are working on a climate action plan, but one of the things they went ahead and did is put a measure on last November's ballot to move the electricity supply to aggregate it for 100% renewable energy. And within that were several stipulations. One was that it needed to be, the energy needed to be supplied by local Ohio-built wind and solar projects. And another thing that it did is it set up a community grants program that was kind of folded into the cost. And so that will generate about $1.7 million per year for grants to be used in low-income neighborhoods and for people of color who have high energy burdens to install some energy efficiency. And also they're talking about using it to set up kind of a green bank to be a fund for, renewable energy and energy efficiency.
Yes, that was a great thing. And I think what's happened is there's been sort of a reaction from some of the companies that don't want this sort of shift to happen over to renewable energy. And one thing that caught my eye was a law in Florida that essentially would prevent municipalities from doing what Columbus did. That would take the power of electrical choice away from municipal utilities and municipalities, and bump it up to the state legislatures, which generally are a lot more, as we saw with House Bill 6, are a lot more under the influence of the current electrical generators, the coal plants and the nuke plants. What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, you had mentioned the Florida bill, so I went and looked it up, and it is horrible. There are some very bad bills in Ohio, the worst we have seen, and this is possibly even worse. And it's clearly taking aim, actually one in Ohio as well, but this one in Florida, the sponsor is basically quoted as saying it's taking aim at cities that have made this commitment to 100% renewable energy. They especially don't want cities to be moving away from gas. The American Gas Association has a lot to do with these bills being introduced in at least 12 states, including Ohio. The gas industry definitely has its eye on Ohio. In California, they did actually pass a law that would move homes off of gas, and so that everything would be electrified, and then that electricity would be supplied by clean energy, which a lot of environmentalists have said this is the direction we need to go. We need to go to, like, say, heat pumps or maybe geothermal, but move off of gas. And besides moving off of coal and oil, Ohio is a fracking state, so the gas industry has a fair amount of power here, and that hasn't even happened in Ohio, and no city has even said this 100% renewable in Columbus was about electricity. It didn't even talk about gas, but they wanted to preempt that. And we also saw that where, in some small towns that were considering even just a commitment to 100% renewable. There's a small village in northeast Ohio near Cleveland called Brettonall. The idea of making a commitment to 100% renewable energy came up there, and the gas industry swooped in and told them, you're not going to do this, and they pulled it off the table. So this is truly a story of the Empire Strikes Back. We made a huge stride with not just Columbus, but also Grove City also passed community choice aggregation for 100% renewable energy, and also is calling for it to be supplied by projects in Ohio. So these were huge strides we made in the last election, and now the Empire is striking back. Yeah,
that's kind of scary, and it's also scary that they're striking back on a national level, because there's a fair number of states considering these anti-clean energy bills, including Ohio. Can you tell us anything more about this proposal in Ohio that's clearly aimed at blocking Ready for 100 activities?
Yes, so in Ohio, I'm sorry to say that 2 very bad bills were signed into law. So this shows kind of basically the hypocrisy. So the one bill was called Senate Bill 52. That was aimed at solar and wind projects. So after Columbus and Grove City passed community choice aggregation for 100% renewable energy, all of a sudden a bunch of solar companies started proposing to build solar projects in the state, and we went from having maybe, I'm not exactly sure, but 400 or 500 megawatts of solar in the pipeline to having 6,000. So there was 30 new proposed projects all over the state. And the solar companies like Ohio because the land most of it's relatively flat, and it's not expensive compared to, the coastal states. And we have First Solar in Cleveland, or sorry, not in Cleveland, in Toledo or near Toledo.
No, in Perrysburg.
Yeah, they make solar panels. So the supplies could be from in-state, and so that brought a lot of these companies into the state proposing to build solar projects. So Senate Bill 52 added extra hurdles at the Ohio Power Siting Board in the name of having local control. They argued on the basis that it would have local control so that county commissioners could veto projects or residents could bring projects up for a referendum. And so that would be on top of the extensive Ohio Power Siting Board process. Now, that would only apply to wind and solar, or does only apply to wind and solar, does not apply to fracking, gas plants, pipelines, anything fossil fuel based. So they made a two-tier system.
Or even nuclear. Yeah.
Yes, aimed at renewables. And they did it in the name of local control. So in that case, they're saying we want local control. But the second bill that also has been signed, House Bill 201, was more like this gas bill. It forbids cities from saying we don't want gas, that we're going to move to 100% renewable electricity and gas, and we're going to move off of gas. And no city had done that, including Columbus or Grove City, but this bill is preempting that and saying they can't do that. So it's taking away local control. So clearly, local control is only okay if it boosts the fossil fuel industry, not if it helps renewables. It's not being applied equally.
Could we review that 201 a little? Again, I got a little confused there. So it says that cities can't say we're going to get off of gas.
Right. So the exact language is that it would block any city or county from issuing any law or zoning code that limits, prohibits, or prevents people and businesses from obtaining gas or propane service. So they can't say, kind of like with Columbus, we've said we want 100% renewable electricity. Well, I don't think anyone in Columbus has been considering this, but say they could consider that after that's in place, that then they could say, well, we don't want gas to be heating people's homes. We want to move those homes to heat pumps or geothermal or some other source, some other renewable source of energy. And if they were to pass that in some sort of referendum or initiative or ordinance, well, now they can't do that. So, and not that Columbus was even considering that. I've never heard that as even a possibility, but the gas industry wanted to head that off at the pass.
Right. Well, I think it's becoming increasingly clear that the old polluting technologies, that the gas, the coal, cannot compete, the nuclear cannot compete economically. And so now they're trying to fall back on the force of law, basically, and regulation to write wind and solar out of the energy picture.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I saw a post by the Office of Nuclear Energy. They said, hey, 55% of non-carbon energy is coming from nuclear, but a lot of that is because places like Ohio have laws like the setback law and like this new SB 52 that prevent wind and solar from being installed.
Yes.
Yeah. I think one of the things that came out in the House Bill 6 testimony was that we had millions of watts. We had megawatts upon megawatts of wind had been planned in the pipeline, but the anti-wind attitude, basically developers said, we're not going to risk everything trying to build someplace where the legislature is hostile.
Yes, absolutely. The setback law that passed in 2014, which is very draconian compared to other states, how far a wind turbine has to be, not just from the next building, but the next property line, that basically put a halt on the wind industry here. And then if you just drive across the border to Indiana or Illinois, there are big wind farms, and they're these developers said, we're not going to go to Ohio. We're going to go to these neighboring states, and the neighboring states got it. And SB 52 is basically doing the same thing to the solar industry. So the Ohio Power Siting Board process is extremely intensive. An application for most of these solar projects is usually like 35 parts and hundreds, if not, well, usually it's like thousands of pages. Like any one of those 35 parts could be hundreds of pages. And it's basically almost like an environmental impact statement in that application, and there's hearings at the front end, hearings at the back end for people to speak up. There's ways to intervene legally. But SB 52 will add where county commissioners can veto a project and citizens can take a project to a referendum if they get enough signatures, which isn't that many. And so a developer isn't going to spend the millions of dollars that it takes to get through the Ohio Power Siting Board process if it can all just be wiped away in a local referendum. And they're not going to come to Ohio, they're going to go to other states. And then if they go to other states, other companies that want renewable energy, companies like Facebook, say, or Amazon, which, are not our favorite companies for a variety of reasons, but they are looking for 100% renewable. Well, they're not going to come to Ohio because they can't get that here. So it's just chasing jobs and money and entire industries out of state for no reason except for these are ideologues. Well, I guess the other reason is, you could take a look at who's donating to them and paying for their campaigns. And really, there's your key reason right there.
Yeah, I think we learned that pretty clearly with the House Bill 6.
Yes, we did.
But, of course, the ironic thing is that while there are small pockets or communities which have been turned against, I would say, wind and solar, like Lake County, for example, that's sort of a pocket of anti-clean energy.
Yeah.
So while there's pockets like that, the vast majority of Ohioans, as you proved with your referendum in Columbus, want more wind and solar. So these folks are not just passing laws that are anti-economic, hurting jobs, reducing the profits and the economic health of Ohio. They're also being anti-democratic in terms of going against the wishes of the vast majority of the people.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there's misinformation. We know there's long been climate misinformation campaigns, and there's misinformation about wind, a lot of misinformation about wind and solar. So there's a solar project proposed for maybe 5 miles from my house, and there's opposition forming because people think that it will reduce property values, which the studies show that doesn't happen. I've seen people say that it leaches toxic chemicals into the ground, which doesn't happen. People say solar emits radiation, which is just flatly not true, but people believe these things, and so then they vote, then they turn out against, and some of them are quite vocal, but like you say, they're a tiny minority. And so the people who, the rest of us who support these projects, we need to get involved. And so if one of these projects is being proposed in your county, go testify in favor of it. File a public comment in favor of it. If you support that and you want more solar or more wind, tell people, because otherwise, kind of the misinformation is allowed to take hold.
Right. Well, that's one of the reasons we have our show, Cathy, and that's one of the reasons we're so grateful you come on and help us get the truth out, because it really sorely needs to get out. It's being drowned out right now.
It is very much.
So thanks again very much, Cathy. And if people are interested in your organization, how do they find out about it?
So you can look up Ready for 100. Probably the most easiest way is just look up our Facebook page, Ready for 100 Columbus. There's also one in Cleveland. And you can also email me if you want to get involved at Becker, BECKER.271 at gmail.com. And then Simply Living, the website is simplyliving, all one word, .org, and that's a Columbus sustainability nonprofit.
All right. So definitely, if Cathy Cowan-Becker sounds like she's into some interesting stuff there and you want to check her out, check out those places that she just mentioned. So always happy to have her on the show as a guest. And, of course, we're always happy to have you on as a guest. There's still lots of time in the show, lots of time to call 877-909-1007. And, today is the day where you can call in and show your patriotism by singing us the national anthem or commenting on anything you've heard or any environmental or ecological issue that we did. It is now also time for us to show our gratitude to our advertisers and patrons. For a Green Future is brought to you by the Wood County Park District. The Wood County Park District is a natural resources conservation agency. They protect natural spaces, maintain quality green spaces, provide engaging programming, and they teach people to love and respect nature. They restore wildlife habitats, and they lead outdoor adventures. Wood County Parks protects natural spaces in Wood County for all to enjoy, from 8 a.m. to 30 minutes past sunset every single day of the year. And there's several ways to check them out and see what they're up to. One is to call them at 419-353-1897. That's 419-353-1897. Another is to go to their website, wcparks.org. And they have a nifty app you can download from the App Store. Just go to any of our app stores and search for WC Parks. And they have now going on to the public announcement part of the show. They've sent me a email, and they have all sorts of things going on that you want to check out. There's rock climbing for kids over at their newest Metro Park there in Perrysburg. They have canoeing on the little WW Night Pond there. That's a real nice event that you can check out. And like I say, they have the Eco-Lit Book Club, which is meeting again after COVID, where they talk about environmentally based books that people read. So definitely check them out. And they have so many activities going on. I literally don't have time to go into detail here, but trust me, you'll enjoy them. I've been to some of them, and they're a lot of fun. And also fun are our patrons. The people who are supporting this show by going to patreon.com and searching for a Green Future. They've searched and they found our show, and there's different levels of membership. They picked the level of membership that fits their budget and their time. Every month, a little bit comes out of their paycheck and comes over to us. And we're really, really grateful. And without them, we couldn't be doing this show right now. So please consider joining them. Please become a patron for a Green Future by going to patreon.com. Okay, so there we are. Now it's time. Rebecca is going to give us drop a little wisdom on us. And so, Rebecca, you've been looking at bunnies.
I have, yeah. I'm house sitting and pet sitting this week, and the only animal that likes me in the whole house is the bunny rabbit. So, this is in honor of Pumpkin. Yeah, okay. Rabbits are in the family Leporidae with hairs, apparently. And then, more specifically, they're in the order Lagomorpha with pikas. Not sure exactly what a pika is. It's something kind of like a rabbit, only not.
Pikas, believe it or not, are actually cuter than rabbits. But go on.
Okay. One of the biggest species is the European rabbit species, which is Oryctolagus, if I'm reading this right. Probably not. But yeah, there are 305 tame species of that. It's the genus, I think, Oryctolagus. But there's 305 tame species and 13 wild species, including 7 cottontails that come from that genus. The first people to ever domesticate rabbits and keep them as livestock were the ancient Romans. And at this point, they're at every continent except for Antarctica. Until about 1918, I think, people thought that they were closely related to rodents, but they're not. They split off, I guess, evolutionarily a long time before rodents did, from whatever came before both rodents and bunnies and pikas and hares and whatnot. Yeah, they're classified as bucks, does, or kits, male, female, or babies. And the North American species are all in the genus Sylvilagus, I think. Probably. Latin is hard. My handwriting is bad.
Yeah, that could be one reason the Roman Empire collapsed, is everyone had such a hard time just talking to each other.
I think that was probably it. But yeah, rabbits have 2 sets of incisors, one behind the other. They're obligate naval breathers, so never pinch a bunny's nose and think it's going to breathe through its mouth. It can't do that. They have amazing eyes. They can see 360 degrees. They spend a lot of their time looking up because hawks and eagles. Hawks and eagles like to eat bunnies. A lot of things like to eat bunnies. But yeah, they have like a tiny itsy bitsy little blind spot on the top of their nose, which will help you if you're a fly trying to line on a rabbit's nose, otherwise not, basically. They have extremely powerful legs and strong claws for digging. They have longer hind limbs, obviously, because hopping. They need to get away. Running is kind of their specialty. They're very good at running. They don't have any paw pads. Unlike most mammals, they have coarse, compressed hair on their feet, which protects them. And their tibia, if I understood correctly, their tibia and fibula bones are fused to make them stronger, so they can really get some power and take off. They have long ears that obviously help detect predators from far away, but also they help cool the bunnies down a lot, both because of their length and also they have blood vessels in their ears that they can expand and contract to cool or warm themselves. Breeds with shorter ears are they're always from cold climates, basically, where you can't really have the big ears. You'll get too cold. They also have ear muscles, which help maintain their balance while they're fleeing, which, you know, you'll see bunnies do some amazing things when they're being chased. They will do all kinds of acrobatics. It's crazy. Jackrabbits, in particular, ears are 17% of their body surface. So,
wow, yeah. Well, I guess they're cooling down because they tend to be like in the desert and stuff, right?
That makes sense, yeah. Bunnies eat grasses and forbs mostly. They eat stuff with a lot of cellulose in it, which is tough to digest, and they handle this by hindgut fermentation, and also by they have two kinds of poop. They have day poops and night poops, and the night poops they eat and redigest because they have still a lot of vitamins in them.
Oh, so, I did not know that.
You might have been happier not knowing that, but it's it serves the same function as when cows chew their cud, basically.
I see. So just think of it as cud just coming out the other end, right? Okay, got it.
There you go. And apparently, like the hard little dry poops, they only do outside of their hutch or their den, whereas mostly they do the soft ones that they're going to re-eat inside their living area.
Okay.
Yeah. Bunnies cannot vomit. They can get intestinal blockages from having not enough fiber. They have no estrus cycle. They don't go into heat. And they can reduce from about 3 to 8 months until death, basically, although they get less fertile later in their lives, but they can theoretically at least have babies for their whole life cycle. They usually have between 4 and 12 kits, and they can get pregnant the next day after giving birth.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's no recreational bunny sex. But, yeah, they have a high rate of mortality in embryos, also a very high fertility rate, so they get pregnant a lot of the fetuses don't make it. Some stuff gets eaten. Basically, they're all about fertility and running, bunnies are. They actually like to feed more at night, although we tend to think of them as being twilight and dawn feeders. Mm-hmm. But really, night is their favorite time.
That would be crepuscular.
Crepuscular,
If you're a dawn and dusk critter, you're a crepuscular.
But they're actually not crepuscular, mostly.
Okay. All right.
But yeah, the oldest known pet rabbit lived to be 18 years old. In the wild, they average about a year because lots of things eat bunnies. Uh-huh. Yes, they do. They're defensive, and they're evolved to prevent this. So it's like an arms race. Their defenses include freezing when something sees at them, because some critters can't see unless you're moving. Thumping, like they'll thump to let everybody else know there's a predator around. They have a instinctual zigzag running style. Serpentine. They have really good overhead vision, as I mentioned. They also get away by burrowing and kicking and biting. They have very strong claws, big teeth, and that's something. They're feisty little critters. Over half of the rabbit population lives in North America. Places where there is no bunnies would include, no natural occurring bunnies in Eurasia, the Japanese mainland, although some of the islands have them, and also not in South America's southern cone. And of course, they are massive pests in Australia and New Zealand, where they were introduced as invasive species. Very, very bad idea. Whoever did that, everyone regrets it. If you want to keep them out of your garden, you would use predator musk or urine. They also do not like the smell of blood, of crushed red pepper, ammonia, vinegar, and garlic.
Okay. Garlic. Oh, that's too bad. I love garlic.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks very much for enlightening us about bunnies. And now I know things about them that I never knew before.
Right.
So, okay. Well, thanks. And if there's any bunny lovers out there, if you want to make an argument for bunnies that some people may have just been turned off to the idea of having a pet bunny. But give us a call at 877-909-1007.
This is why I liked biology classes, because a lot of the stuff that they teach you about animals sounds just crazy and science fiction-y. You know, like what starfish are? No, they're making that up. You know?
Yeah, nope, but it actually works.
Yeah, it does.
All right. Well, now it's time to go on to our ecological news segment. And I'm going to start with a quick little story. If you're a regular listener, you know that last week we had a guest on talking about the Prairie State coal plant, which is responsible for such high prices around here with electricity and so many billions of tons of CO2. I think I might have hit a nerve there because the U.S. representative from Illinois, Rodney Davis, actually felt like he had to go tell a big lie to help Prairie State along. He made the public claim that Prairie State was the cleanest coal plant in the nation, which is just a huge...
Should be very frightening if true.
True, because it is incredibly dirty, and that was a straight-out lie. In fact, PolitiFact there does their fact-checking, and this was a pants-on-fire level lie, because literally by every measure, the amount of CO2, the amount of nitrogen dioxide, the amount of sulfur, the amount of, any pollutant that you want to list, the Prairie State coal plant is at or near the top of all of them. So shame on you, Representative Rodney Davis, for trying to just pass off one of those huge, flat out, blatant lies. I almost said blat out, so blatant and flat.
He blatted it right out.
He did, and but he got caught, and there's been some backlash to that. So hopefully the days of politicians being able to just flat out lie without being challenged are behind us, because we've got to challenge this stuff. And now on to a very big news story, which you may or may not have heard, because as I've said before, we're in this period of segregated news. Whatever kind of news you like, be it sports or economic information or whatever. The current news cycle attitude is to point you at those stories and not tell you about everything else that's happening in the world. So those of us that are on the lists as knowing about climate change and ecological stuff and environmental know this story, but Lytton, British Columbia is a small town over there in the northwest, and some amazing things happened to Lytton this past week. Last Sunday, even as we were just after we did our show, Lytton broke the Canada all-time high temperature record, the highest temperature ever recorded in Canada, 116 degrees Fahrenheit, which is like amazing.
Holy smoke, literally.
Yeah, but then the next day, Lytton broke that record again, and Lytton reached 118 degrees Fahrenheit, which, 2 days in a row, setting the all-time high for Canada. That alone would be newsworthy. But then the next day, they shattered the record again. And in fact, they went up to 121.2 degrees in, northwest Canada, which is supposed to be a temperate rainforest. That whole area is supposed to be covered in deep forest and have, little rain sprinkling events inside the forest, and it's supposed to be wet and it's supposed to be cool. And instead, it reached temperatures that are more often seen in places like Death Valley. So 121 degrees last Tuesday.
And the thing is, Death Valley, I assume, doesn't catch on fire that much because...
you just jumped on my next point there. Because the next day, so after 3 days of record high temperatures, the city of Lytton burned to the ground.
Oy.
Yeah. 90% of the city is now literally ashes, and they're still trying to recover from it. They're still trying to figure out who managed to get away, who actually died in the fire, because there was literally, in some cases, like a 10-minute warning. It was like people smelled the smoke, and they either jumped in their car right then, abandoning everything, or they got caught in the fire. And
it takes me 10 minutes to find my shoes and my glasses.
Yeah, unfortunately. It was a good thing you weren't living in Lytton last Wednesday. And so this is a story this is the story that should be the top headline still all over the country.
You would really think, because that's really bad and scary, and a lot of people die. And, and a tornado goes to a small town, and everybody's like, oh, it is, and it's all over the news.
Right, and now we're in the second week of talking about that apartment building down in Florida, which is a tragic story, but, pretty much they've been repeating themselves for the entire last week. And so here, this comes along, literally one of the most dramatic stories in the past decade. I mean, when has this happened before, that a city 3 days in a row breaks the all-time high temperature record and then burns to the ground? I mean, this demonstrates global warming better than any of these arguments that we've been making. We talk about CO2 levels, parts per million in the atmosphere, blah, blah, blah. But, I mean, this really brings it home in a way nothing else has in my experience. And it actually really has impacted the people of Canada. This has been covered well in a lot of Canadian news stories, a lot of Canadian media stories, but they're really woefully underreported in the U.S. But it is at least having an effect in Canada, because I want to go on to our next story, which is an update on the Fairy Creek, which is also in British Columbia, where, as you know, very brave and free protesters are doing things like locking themselves to logging equipment to save the last of the old-growth forest in British Columbia. And what's been happening, as I reported last week, is there's been this steady escalation where the protesters have been figuring out more and more fiendish devices to lock themselves to stuff. And the police have been the Royal Canadian Mounted Police have been getting more and more aggressive and careless in extricating them from those. And it looked like we were on our way to a fatality or a serious injury. But what happened after Lytton burned down, the police are still there, and they're still extricating people. But it actually looks like they've decided to slow down. Like they're doing one arrest a day, and like taking all day to do it, and being very slow and careful about it. Okay. Because there's something about having the people, having the side that you're fighting for, what they're fighting for. The loggers are fighting to turn British Columbia into a hotter, drier place.
Yeah, and it suddenly occurred to them why that's not a good idea. Right,
and they suddenly the whole country got this illustration of, what is a hotter, drier? It means our cities get burned down and people die, and I think it took the enthusiasm out of the RCMP for at least for the short term. So the arrests are still happening. There's been over 350 arrests so far, but the police have definitely stepped it back a little bit, because this is shocking, and this is one of those stories that everybody in North America should know and be talking about. And instead, we're talking about things like the ex-president's reaction to some sort of subpoena that I don't know. So let's leave all that aside. Another dramatic story that, again, those of us that get the focused things from like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram that not everybody gets, the Gulf of Mexico caught on fire.
Ooh,
yeah.
crap.
Yeah, this is, I mean, not the whole Gulf, but what happened was there was a natural gas pipeline produced by Mexico in their national gas company, and it ruptured.
Ooh, Pemex.
Pemex, right. And it created a gigantic molten ball of fire in the Gulf of Mexico that was about 100 yards across.
Oh, crap. Was that near Tampico?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
I spent some time in Tampico. I knew one of my housemates in the boarding house was a nurse who worked for Pemex.
Oh, okay. So anyway, if you Google this now, now that you know it exists, and you just Google Gulf of Mexico on fire, you'll see these very dramatic videos of the Gulf burning, of the ocean burning, and surrounded by a ring of fire boats spraying water on the ocean to try to put the fire out.
Wow. Wow.
I know. It's insane, and it's an insane image, and it's one of those things that you might expect to see in a science fiction movie.
I guess it's not technically a grease fire, is it?
No, it's a gas
You're
fire.
not supposed to put fire or water on grease fires.
Right. That makes the fire worse by creating
Right.
hydrogen. Actually.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
Didn't know that.
But no, it's just plain old CH4 methane.
You're supposed to take it off the burner, but I don't know how they would do that exactly.
Yeah. Well, what they eventually figured out was to turn off the pipe.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. That sounds real good.
Yeah. Finally, somebody said, "Hey, let's turn this off, and maybe the fire will stop." And,
Yeah, there we go.
And so that's eventually what they did. So that fire is now out. But it again, these really dramatic things are happening that really demonstrate very clearly that this is a dire emergency, folks. We are literally in the last little bits, the last few years, and some are saying we got 10 years, some are saying we got 20. No, we've got like half a dozen at the most. We've got maybe one or two, and it's really time to do whatever that thing is you've been meaning to do your part. Like insulating your house or buying a geothermal heating system, or maybe even putting solar panels on your house. It's time to do all those things because we should be having a World War II level mobilization on this. And we need to shift the whole economy over to a non-carbon economy. And as long as we keep going the way we're going, we're going to keep getting these fantastic disasters happening. So,
Boy.
All right. So now, though, to bring it back home, our next news story, very close to home, Bowling Green, Ohio. This past week, they had something called a Community Energy Savings Day. Doesn't that sound nice?
Yes, it does. What does it actually mean?
What it actually means is that the demand on the electrical grid was so high that the prices for electricity were spiking.
Oh,
right.
Okay.
And so they put out this community energy
savings in the sense
day.
of costing you more money. Great.
Right. And so they were basically asking people to turn off all their electricity because the price had shot up so much that it was costing tons of money. And the whole grid is interconnected. And so when some part of the grid has a really high temperature event, it affects the whole rest of the grid because electricity gets shunted over to wherever it's needed. And so, as you know, we're having record high temperatures in a lot of the country, like especially last Wednesday. And so, they asked everybody to do this. They put it out on Twitter. Unfortunately, Bowling Green only has like 50 Twitter followers. So it wasn't a terribly effective thing. And I have to point out that those are the times where home rooftop solar systems, like the one I've got on my home, and like the one that if you follow the show, you know that the city of Bowling Green is trying to outlaw, well, not outlaw, but fine and penalize out of existence. That's when we're the most valuable because my household anyway was putting a net amount of power onto the grid. My household was not taking off the grid during the high temperature, high sunlight part of the day. My house was net supplying electricity out to my neighbors.
And you could have more of that, Bowling Green, if you just stop being great bloody Amadons about it.
Yes, exactly. So just something to keep in mind. And again, as we say at the start of the show, this is affecting your wealth, your health, your happiness. And the way it affects the wealth here is when the city has to buy expensive power on the market during these outages and during these high demand days. That literally costs you more money. If we make this shift over, what they discovered in Australia, there they have so much rooftop solar that on these high demand days, or high heat days, they don't have the peaks in demand. Because at the same time the demand is going up, the solar panels are putting out more because it's hotter and it's sunnier. And so they don't have these peak cost days because rooftop solar's shaving off that peak. So as I said, we need a World War II mobilization. Thousands of households around here should have solar panels.
Here.
Every south-facing roof should have a solar panel. So hopefully we'll get there because that's part of the green future. One last quick note. Those of you who watched fireworks last night, I did, down in Bowling Green. They were beautiful. But there's been a lot of criticism of fireworks because they pollute and they put stuff like toxic perchlorate into the environment. There's a clean way, there's a balanced way to do everything, including fireworks. There's a nitrogen-based, non-toxic form of fireworks. We need to switch over to that and keep the fireworks but lose the poison. All right, well, that's it for this week. Thanks very much for listening. This is Joe DeMare.
And Rebecca Wood.
And we are signing off.
No nukes.